Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance for what is an episode of what I like to call the Mentality Series, a series in which I interview some of the best at what they do and try and find those true underlying ideas and thoughts that make success in football, in sport, in anything. I want stories and answers that are going to help me and are also going to help you lot watching and listening. I want to know the true psychology of what creates results in life, and there is no one better to explore that than with my guest today, Owen Eastwood. Owen describes himself as a performance coach, but he is an expert on how to build world-class cultures. He's worked with the likes of Southgate and his England team. He's worked with the British Olympics, with the South African cricket team, and NATO as well. Honestly, it's easier to write a list of teams he hasn't worked with than the ones he has. There's so many teams, there's so much experience that he has for myself to draw on. You might have heard me mention him on the podcast before. I think the last episode I did with Dad about how to build winning culture, we talked about the books we read, and I read Owen Eastwood's book. I've got it here, the book Belonging by Owen Eastwood. Is a really, really good book, and I recommend that book. I'm not endorsed by anything, but it's a very, very good book. In terms of, for me, I really identified with my work in building cultures and doing work with psychology, say with the Newcastle women's team. I learned so much from that, and the stuff we'll get into in this episode I talked to him. This interview itself was such a good interview, honestly. It was so good. I got so much insight from it and so much inspiration from it as well. We got into his work with Southgate and England. That was really insightful. We speculated on the situation at Manchester United, his thoughts on the rebuild there. We really get into the ideas of the book, the ideas of belonging, values, having a set vision, ideas of evolutionary psychology, bringing story and narrative and setting hierarchy as well. Everything that can be utilised for working in and leading teams, that is what we talked about. And it was so insightful. I'm so excited to share it with you. Honestly, honestly excited about it. So without any further ado, let's get into the mentality of Owen Eastwood.
Spent some time at Carrington with Wayne Rooney. He explained to me that you are taken through the hall as you come as a new player, and the photos are explained to you.
This is McClaren Performance.
Okay, so Owen, nice to see you. Thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
Good, Josh. Bloody looking forward to this, and thank you for reaching out. I've enjoyed your pod. I think it's got some real value, and it's bloody nice to be on it.
Oh, no, you're welcome. You're probably the first guest on without my dad being here as well. I feel like I've lost my support system a little bit.
I'll take care of it.
Well, he's usually interrupting me, to be fair, so now I can just be like, I've got questions I want to ask. Perfect, I'll just fire away. All right, well, I'll get into it anyway. I think the first one is, because it's not a very specific job that you have, and not one that is quite common around in football and other sports as well. How would you describe your job and what it is exactly that you do?
Well, I call myself a performance coach, which probably doesn't explain much, but because I haven't got any qualifications, I've got to call myself something.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to, I was a lawyer for a long time, and then I became whatever the hell I do now. But the way I think about it is I've got a real interest and passion around team culture and leadership. And I'm not in a theoretical way, in a practical way.
Yeah.
So I haven't got any qualifications, psychology, even done any courses or anything really. I've just, for whatever reason, sort of been thrown into real life situations, and I've got a real fascination as to how our environment and the way we lead in it affects people's behaviour and ultimately performance. So when I get invited in, I suppose I'm a performance coach with a specialism around culture and leadership.
Do you find you work well within it more so than you say people having qualifications, because you engage and kind of relate well to sports teams, that kind of endeavor, that kind of coming together? Do you like connect to that more so?
I think it's a help that I don't know much.
Yeah.
and what I mean by that is I don't come with models in my mind or theories and things. I mean, I am actually very interested in the research, but to me, it's very much a background thing. So my whole approach is that, like, I'll jump in and sort of shut up and observe and listen, and then we'll try and work out what's holding us back a bit here. I try not to have too much preconceived views, and I don't try and take people through a model or anything. My experiences have proven to me that every situation is unique and different, and the issues, you've got to have an open mind about what the hell they are. So, I'm different. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone who's brilliantly qualified. It's just my style. I've got a few things which form the backbone of my work, which we can talk about, but basically I just try and have the most open mind I possibly can, and, have a bit of fun with it.
I think that is the best way to do it, though, the way I also try to do it anyway. I think when I first started advising and talking to teams and people, it's very much you think, right, this is how you're supposed to do it. I'm going to tell you how you actually do it, and you just kind of not force it, but you tell them what to do and you expect them to do it. But I found it's so much better to come in, like you said, like, I don't know much, but you watch and you learn and you understand the culture you're going into, and you go, well, I feel come up with this idea. It's very like, because you say, like, with the qualifications, very scientific. It's hard to really make it a scientific job in that sense, because you're coming in and experimenting, investigating. It's kind of, it's art in that way. You're very intuitive about what a team needs or what a club needs or something like that. Would you
I think
agree
one
with that?
part of it, Josh, is that sometimes, psychologists as an example, but sort of experts can come in, they understand all the academic side of it, and they can be they're there, but they're sort of observing, and in a way people feel they're judging, and people feel a bit intimidated by them. And I've even heard psychologists talk about their role as to witness things and to observe things. So I see myself as someone different. If I'm invited into an environment to help them, then I just roll my sleeves up, mate. Like my job is to help them then. I'm not there to witness anything. I'm not there just to observe. I mean, that's part of learning. But ultimately, I take real responsibility. Like, when they're looking at me, I need to have an impact on performance. I'm not there to be, again, an intellectual. I'm there to be like one of the coaches. I've got my role to play, and we'll get stuck into it. I mean, I'm coming from a very much a farming family. We're just practical people. It's we don't sit in ivory towers. We just get stuck in.
I think there's a quote that you've been using when I've done my research and watching you do talks. There's a quote you've used quite a lot, a statistic, I guess, more so, that 70% of human behavior is determined by the environment that you're in. And I've stolen it as well, because it's a good one. It's a really good one to sell to players and teams to understand exactly what you do. Would you agree? Of course, you agree with that statement. How does that actually work in terms of how does the environment actually affect a person and the things that they do?
Well, you think about yourself, and I reflect on my own experiences. There's certain environments I've been in and go into now where I feel friggin' awesome. Like people, I come in and they smile at me, they look me in the eye, they welcome me. I've never met these people before. This makes me feel good. And then they say, we're looking forward to, you're doing this or that. And I'm feeling quite confident. Yeah, this is great. But what's actually happening is that I'm having a hormonal reaction to the way that environment is set up for me. They're making me feel pretty good. So my anxiety and stress levels are diminishing. And oxytocin, that hormone we experience when we feel connected to people, that's starting to surge a bit in me. And the dopamine, that motivating hormone, that's starting to really play its part, because I'm thinking, I'm really looking forward to this now. Like I was sort of really worried about this on the way here, and now everyone's so friendly and they seem to be pretty confident in me. So I'm feeling pretty good. And then you and I could go into a different environment, and actually we get there and it's disorganized, and the people that are supposed to be meeting us and greeting us aren't there. There's someone else's, but they're a bit confused about what the hell we're doing. It's all a bit chaotic. It's not very relational. It's like everyone's doing their job, but there's no vibe around, connection. And then people asking us to remind them of what the hell we're here for or whatever. And we're like, our stress levels are going up here.
Yeah.
And so my performance will diminish. And it's been like that as a kid. And I think it's been like for everybody who's ever lived on this planet, is that we are different in different environments. In some environments, feel frigging great and we can
Yeah.
really, really go for it. In other environments, we're scared out of our wits and scared to make a mistake and not really enjoying it and basically wasting a lot of energy on stress. So when it comes to my job, that's really what it's like. It's stressful enough performing in a high level. So let's not waste any more energy by unnecessary stress in our environment. So let's set it up positively. It's going to be great. Make it nice and simple and clear as possible. Very motivating. Make people connected with each other and trust each other. And let's have a crack at this thing.
I really like your work because it relate, and I can't remember if my thoughts on evolutionary psychology came along the same time I was reading into your stuff, but I really have a strong connection now with that evolutionary psychology aspect. I think it's so interesting how it informs performance, and I can see that kind of informs your work as well in terms of, like you said, the environment affects us so much, and that's something that's come from so many years before when we've had to work together, and those individuals that are part of a collective and work well within a collective actually develop and survive and then become, the people that we are today. I think you used a really good example in your book, and I think in other things as well, is with Michael Owen in changing clubs and how that affected his performance and what he told you about that. Could you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, the point you make, I think my honest experience has been, I've worked with some awesome psychologists and sport people, again, Mitchell and Pippa Grange, and I've been lucky. But one thing for me was that I don't know what it is, but I'd switch off a little bit when people start talking about models and theories, and
yeah,
I don't know what it is, or maybe I'm just got a low attention span, but I didn't get very excited about it. And people say to me, here's an experiment in Canada where someone did this with a marshmallow and whatever, and I'm like, that's quite interesting, but it didn't convince me. It never convinced me.
Yeah.
These studies and these models, just I don't know what the hell it is, but I never really got very convinced about it. And the experiment seemed a bit light for my liking. So I came across evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford, and that was when I really got psychology basic. Because what he said to me, Owen, describe a really great dressing room right now. Just what does it look like? How does a leader lead? What sort of things do they do? Rituals, the way they talk about, etc. So I said, well, look, when it's good, I think it looks like this. And he said to me, you've just described a hunting group 60,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that was a breakthrough. He said that we don't just turn up now and make it all up. Our behaviors in groups have been hardwired for not only thousands of years, probably longer than that. So that has really helped me a lot. And I need to belong. Michael Owen is an example. In Liverpool, he was there as a kid. He was in the first team, I think, 16, 17. He knew everybody and everyone knew him, to the point even his manager, Gerard Houllier, knew his family, but not only his family, his wife's parents.
Yeah.
So after it's just everyone knew each other. He knew he belonged there. He felt very comfortable. He wasn't stressing out about the dynamics and the social complexity of it. He was very comfortable with all that. And he performed at that friggin' amazing level. I mean, people might forget, but he was, Ballon d'Or winner and one of the best players in the world. He went to Real Madrid a couple of years later, and the opposite happened. When he arrived in the team, he was just stuck in a meeting room with the team. There wasn't any induction. He wasn't formally introduced. He wasn't taken aside and explained, this is a history of Real Madrid. This is what we believe in. This is our style of play. These type of things. There's no narrative around us get in there and try and prove yourself. And he said that it was just an anxiety reaction basically for the whole year of, I don't think I belong here. I think everyone is looking at me every training, every game, and thinking whether I should be here or not, whether I've got anything. And he said it was from being this relaxed joker at Liverpool, he ended up this slightly paranoid character in the dressing room where a couple of guys over there are speaking Portuguese and looking in his direction. He's thinking, are they taking the piss out of me or something? He was, that's what it is. And so what he's describing is how in different environments, we have a different hormonal reaction to them. And that latter one at Real Madrid, for me, was wasting a hell of a lot of energy as well as losing confidence just because the environment wasn't set up the way it could have been and the way it had been at Liverpool.
I think another example of you doing your work and how that relates to football is with England and the work you did with Southgate as well. What was the job? Because now, they describe in the change for over the past few years from a team that was really disconnected and kind of disconnected from the country as a whole, really disconnected from themselves and the fans, to a team now that is closer to winning something, but is definitely different in terms of its psychology than it was a few years ago. What was the kind of work that you did there, and for how long, and what changes did you try and implement there?
Well, I'm at the risk of losing some of the audience with my next statement. It's just a true belief of mine. I spoke to an All Black coach, a very, very successful double World Cup winning coach a few years ago. And we were talking about this, and he said, to create a champion team is a spiritual exercise.
Yeah.
And I intuitively believe that. But then I went away and thought, a lot of people, particularly in football, might freak out at hearing that. But actually, if you look at the definition of spirituality, it has two limbs. First one is an individual connected to a higher purpose than their own. And the second limb of it is deep emotional connection between a group of people. Yeah. They are the two elements of spirituality. And to me, I don't see how you create a really sustainable, high-performing team unless you have both of those present. So for me, that's a statement of fact, that it is a spiritual journey, if you like. I spent about 3 or 4 months doing sort of research and talking to England players all the way back to the 1950s. Right, every decade, right up. I just wanted to get a big picture view of what it was like to play for England over time. And I think it had been pretty purpose-driven and a strong sense of identity, probably in the 60s and 70s a bit, and then maybe wavered a bit off and on since then. But what players were describing to me was quite a lonely, very anxiety-ridden experience where you're going to these tournaments with huge external expectation, pressure. And internally, the environment was very tactical and technical. And so your stress levels were only going up inside your environment. They weren't being managed. And so for me, that was an obvious area where England could improve. And, I'm definitely not overstating my role whatsoever. I've just been one of the people who've been helping in the background. Gareth Southgate is the one who has, I think, done a lot of exceptional things, which I hope will continue beyond his reign. And I fear that.
I fear that. Yeah.
I fear that some great stuff. He's learned, whatever you think of his tactics and his substitutions and whatever, he has learned how to create the best environment for English modern contemporary players. It is relaxed. It is fun. They have fun. They don't have cliques. They connect with each other. They understand the purpose, which is to inspire and unify their country, and they embrace that. And they've taken it on a couple of levels, I would say. They really love the fact that that shirt has been passed down to them, worn by people before them, and will be worn by others after them.
Yeah.
They've got a very strong sense that, while they're wearing it, they want to write their own chapter of the story. They want to go to Russia and they want to make some history, and they want to punch a few people in the nose and figuratively and outperform their world ranking.
Yeah.
When they come to the Euros last year, they also wanted to do something special. They wanted to give the people of England 4 playoff games, amazing experiences after they'd been sort of isolated for 2 years or whatever it was. Some great moments and memories to share and take with them. So, the team has developed a cause and a purpose bigger than themselves. So they're not all going in there thinking, I need to get the most for myself out of here, which is just a reality of a lot of professional sport. They don't think that. And also they have built these lovely connections with each other and with their coach and coaches and staff. And one of the beautiful things I think which reduces their anxiety and stress, is the fact they've got a highly relational coach who they know he cares about them as a human being. He does. They know that. And therefore, if they don't get selected for big games, etc., they know that he at least has put their situation into consideration, and he does want the best for them, and he's made an alternative decision. They can live with it. And you saw that during the Euros. Some big players were on the sidelines at times, but there was no whining or moaning about it because they trust the environment, they trust the coach. I hope England never loses these things. They've learnt something massive in the last few years, and there's no need to throw it away with a new coach.
Exactly. It speaks a lot to the misunderstanding of the role of the manager, that he receives so much criticism, despite what he's done. And despite what you and I understand of building culture and environment, having those values, you're right. I think England was a team before that was in fear of results and wanting to win. And that was that in terms of culture and their identity, what they identified with, that was really it, was we have to win a World Cup, we have to win a Euros. And what Gareth has brought is more so values and identity within. And like you say, like you talk about, he's set that vision, but what he's also done is set the path, really, the details within that. So they want to get so far, they want to win a penalty shootout, things like this that are reachable, and within the values that they have as well, has absolutely changed England and its culture, like, completely. Like you say, I hope they don't. That's what I argued recently on an episode, was I think people would want a new manager, but quite often we don't build on what we've had before. It's almost like when we go a new manager, it's refresh, change everything completely and go again. I hope if they do, and of course they have to move on from Southgate at some point, I hope they do it with the knowledge of all the good things he's done, and the manager coming should also have those traits as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something else, that he hasn't just brought in a good environment and an enlightened, caring style of leading, because for some people they don't value those things particularly. But I think what everyone would value is that he's given that team belief.
Yeah,
and that is, the elite level of coaching. It's all very well to say, this is what I want you to do, and this is what I think we're capable of. It's a different story that the players really believe that. And when he inherited that team, obviously that Euros had lost to Iceland, there was not belief in that team.
Yeah,
they didn't think they're going to rock up to Russia and get in the semi-finals, or get in the finals of the following Euros. What? So that's another outstanding achievement, is that there is a team there that will, who the hell knows what will happen. That's the beauty of sport. But they will fly to Qatar, and they will have belief that they could win that.
Absolutely.
If they play well and they stick together and all the other things they execute, they believe they could win it. Now, that's pretty impressive to get a coach to that point. And it's easily, again, you can lose that. So, yeah, that's a tangible thing, right? Some of these other things are a bit intangible, and not everyone's into it. I get that. But that is a very tangible thing in a dressing room, people believing that they can win.
You're right. It's like it's so easy. And from the outside, it looks like, you say, a manager has got to form a team with the best technical abilities that can play together. But really, there's that aspect of management and coaching where really you've got to give them that belief, the belief in what you're working on, what you're doing with them, and the belief that they can actually do something as well. It's probably the hardest thing to give to a team, or to give to players. I think it leads on to another club, really, and it's kind of where England was previously, which is Manchester United, where my dad's working at the moment, and we wanted to touch on it a little bit. What were your thoughts really on that situation? They're really, and I like to say, speculation, because we're on the outside, really, we don't understand what's going on, but they seem to be a team that's needs to rebuild, or as they keep saying, rebuild that culture. What is your perspective on that situation? What should they really be doing, I guess?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Unless you're in an environment, you can never properly understand what's occurring. So I would put that out there at the start. I agree with that. From the outside, I think the work that I do as a performance coach, but also really leaders, you're always toggling between the big picture stuff and then the in the weeds stuff.
Yeah.
And you've got to have attention on both. It's hard, but you've got to do both. And sometimes we get leaders, coaches in particular, who are very good on the micro weed stuff and not so good on the big picture stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, looking at it from the outside, I actually think the team, to me, seem to lack a sense of identity.
Yeah.
And they have done for quite a few years. And it comes back to your previous point. In football in particular, but in other sports, often the reality is coach is king. So we get you to come and coach our team. You've had a good record somewhere else, so you just do your thing. And what happens is there's not a sense of a coherent playing style or culture or type of player, all these type of things. It becomes a complete mismatch depending on who the coach is. And I think Manchester United definitely had that. If you look at the managers they've had since Fergie retired, I'm not a football expert. It doesn't look that coherent, either playing style, type of player, and environment and coaching style. if you can contrast that with a team, I'm from New Zealand, so the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team, for example, but also Barcelona Football Club. I know that when they interview head coaches, they actually start with a presentation of, this is who we are, this is our story, this is a style of play that we believe in, these are the type of players we love, and this is the type of environment we create. And like the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team have had a player leadership group since 1924. Doesn't care who's applying for the next job there. They're not going to be able to blow that up because it's not their personal preference. The All Blacks know that that's a huge part of their success. They've also got induction rituals, which are over 100 years old. They're not going to allow someone to come in and go, nah, I don't do that. I don't believe in rituals, so I'm blowing that up. Their style of play, they have really, really like to play a high-tempo, expensive game. Very, very counter-attacking and attacking. They're not going to have an attritional coach who's going to come in and play 10-man rugby. So same with Barcelona. They are, I'm no expert on what they're up to at the moment, but certainly, when I had my conversations around that, they were very clear on their identity, their style of play, what their fans wanted and expected, etc. And Manchester United should be the same. I mean, they have the most amazing story of who they are, where they come from. There's a hell of a lot of deep, deep emotion in that story as well. I remember when I started my work with England, I spent some time in Carrington with Wayne Rooney. He was a captain at that point. He explained to me that, you are taken through the hall as you come as a new player, and the photos are explained to you of these are the teams, and there's the Busby Babes, and then you need to understand about the Munich air disaster, but you need to understand the rebuilding of that team that happened, leading to a first European Cup. All of these things are explained, and he said that the Bobby Charlton or some of those players would come in at the start of the season and pre-season and would just speak to the players and talk about the shirt and what it represented. So, and along with that was this style of play, wasn't it? Again, a high tempo, playing with width, and also aspects like just how their mental toughness, particularly at the end of games, all that stuff, that the players came through the academy. That was a big part of their identity. They didn't just go to the market all the time. They gave players opportunities. They identified them locally. So to me, that is all a friggin' amazing identity. I can't see really a brilliant reason why now we should just throw it away. Has got another coach who's coming from the Netherlands with a different model and say, we'll just do whatever you tell us to do. So and at a macro level, I'd look at that. At a micro level, you can't judge from the outside. There'll be certain dynamics, certain characters, alphas, no doubt, that may have been holding the performances back in the last year or so. And no doubt the manager will address that.
That's what we always talk about. And I've talked with Dad as well, with everyone really, the Man United way. And there's always a conversation around what is the Man United way. And they could never really, like you talk about and what we talk about with values, they don't really have that set 3 or 4. This is what we are. This is what we stand for. I think you contrast that to Barcelona. And I think if you go on their website, they have their values there. I think it's about 5 of them. I remember I was talking to Dad and I was showing them to him. I was like, they know what they are. And I think you see that now in what they're doing at the moment. Despite the troubles, they have a real identity in what they are and what they expect from their players as well. It's quite interesting you talk about where you walk down that hall and you see that history. And a lot of your approach is to do with history and the lineage of a team and how a person is a part of a chain of everything that's been before and what will come after it. In terms of Manchester United, and it's looking, and this is speculation again, because sometimes it looks like the weight of the history of Manchester United is something that could affect a player that's playing at the moment in terms of the weight of what they've won before and the situation they're in now. Is it possible that for them that they're looking back at history? And when you go in, because I've been into the training ground and you go in and there's gigs up there, there's Ronaldo back a few years ago, there's history and trophies and it's everywhere and not so much identity as to what we are now. Is there a point where looking back at history is detrimental to a team?
Well, that's a good question. Not where I come from. Because we only understand who we are if we understand where we came from. I mean, that's part of it. I'm part Maori, part English, part Irish. There's that Polynesian idea you're talking about, which it's quite a theme in belonging. This idea of whakapapa, WHAKAPAPA.
I didn't want to say it because I didn't know if I was going to pronounce it.
No. It's not an expletive. It's a beautiful spiritual idea, but it's actually pretty much a universal idea. And it is, you've described it pretty well there. it's just this very simple understanding that whatever community we're part of, and it could be Manchester United, or it could be our school, it could be our religion, it could be our family, or it could be our nation, whatever community we feel we belong to, that understanding is that we are part of a line of people with our arms interlocked with each other that go all the way back to the origin story, whatever you think that is. And but also into the future, to the end of time. And the simple metaphor is the sun first shone on our first team, our first ancestors, and has slowly moved down this line of people. And now it's on us. And so it's not about the weight of history. If it's a Manchester United, we did the same with the England football team. You can say it's got a weight of history. Everyone's waiting literally for the next friggin' trophy. But that's not the way that idea plays out, because what it actually happens is when the sun's shining on you, before you just get busy, you create a space and just think, let's connect with what this shirt represents and what the whole point and purpose of this team. Let's just do that. And then let's live out that identity while we're wearing the shirt. But let's ourselves preview what we could achieve together. So what could the legacy of this team be? And I'm telling you, it's not always we picked up the trophy at the end of the season. Sometimes, and I've been involved in teams who have actually just had a friggin' nightmare. And so what's required is to rebuild. And so we're not winning trophies for a year or two. That's just a reality. But we accept that. We've got enough ego management that we can deal with that. So we just need to get this team in a good place.
Yeah.
Okay. But other times we're good to go. Okay. We are good to go now. If we get our shit together, we are good to go right now. And it's not about we're doing this because everyone expects. Actually, you just turn all the volume down on the outside. And what you're doing is creating an internal story of this is what would be friggin' awesome this season and next season, or this competition or this World Cup or whatever. What would awesome look like? Like, what would it be? Yeah. And then that becomes what motivates you, not fear of letting people down, but just the motivation of doing something really cool with your mates and people you care about. And, with England, when I interviewed Michael Owen, originally he said that we never spoke about that stuff inside the camp. But on the outside, it was just this relentless high noise level that you need to go and win. You should win. We want to win. Bring it home. But then on the others, also at the same time, in like a schizophrenic way, you're not that good. You're technically inferior to the opposition. You're mentally weak. You can't deal with penalties. So it's like a bit of a crazy story on the outside. Like we expect so much, but we actually don't really believe in you. And he said it did infiltrate into the team because there wasn't anything inside the team which was countering it. It was like tactical and technical. So I think it's really awesome when a team has those conversations. It's not stuff they're ever going to share with the media or fans. It's just they know this is what we would love to do while we're wearing the shirt and while we have this absolute joy and experience of representing our country or club.
I think in that sense, it's not quite the weight of the history. It's almost like the weight of the results in terms of the expectation, like you said, the outside of that as well. I think that's it within Manchester United. I think that's what they will be doing in terms of what you said. I think I was talking to Dad in terms of, and we were talking to a psychologist, and it was a circle drawn out, and it was within the circle. He was within the circle, and within that, the middle of players, and then you've got the coaches, and then you've got the staff, and then that's it, and then it's all encapsulated within that. I think it quite fits into what you were talking about there. Another thing, one thing I mainly learned from reading the book, and one thing I never really incorporated much when I talk about my philosophy. I know you don't like models, but I have like a little model, not a fixed one really, but one that just helps me like explain stuff, is that the culture is the foundation of everything. And when I look at that, I talk about hierarchy, which we might get into in a minute, in terms of psychological safety and communication. And the one I never really talked about was story and narrative. I never really thought of that aspect, but one that's so powerful, like you said, is having that narrative. So, for example, I work with the Newcastle women team at the moment, and from reading your book, I think, well, I have a habit of just saying what I do and don't like about a team, and not really motivating properly. And I think with that team, it's what is the history behind that? What are they actually fighting for? And really, it's that story of how how oppressed women's football has been for so long, how specifically Newcastle United women has been for so long as well, and the narrative of not just winning the league to go up the leagues for the sake of it, but to do so because there's that actual meaning of you're representing those girls in the crowd who one day want to play football and deserve to play football professionally. So I've incorporated that into what I do. But how important is it in terms of everything you do? How important is it to set a narrative for a team? I always say, like almost like a protagonist, an antagonist, and the obstacle, and make those things set so the team understands that. Is that an important thing to do, or a thing that you quite commonly do within teams?
Well, I think everything we do is the playing out of a story. I think that's what life is, without being too philosophical about it. I've got a version of the story of who I am and what I want to do and what my family are all about, and I try and live that out. And so, you know, again, from a psychological point of view, there's about social identity theory or whatever, isn't it? You know, the teams we're part of, they do have a story. And now we construct a story. It doesn't matter whether the coach wants to go there or not. We do. We have a story. And any team we're part of, we have a story in our minds. And it could be that this is a really crap team. That could be the story.
Yeah.
It's not said by anybody, but we all feel it and know it. Or it can be, this is friggin' awesome. We're actually pretty good here. We can compete. So we always have a story. It's simply a question of how explicit we are about it. I think if it's used in the right way, it is really, really helpful for people. Like, people learn a lot more from stories than they do from facts and figures and blackboards. So, for example, if we lose 3 games in a row, then, you know, we could have a tactical analysis and look at the big screens and have it explained to us. But actually, I actually think a better way of doing it is just for the leader, the coach, to stand there and say, hey, let's just relax. This is what's just happened. We're a frigging good team. Like, we can compete with anyone. What's happening right now, it's just inevitable, is that we've just slightly lost a bit of intensity, a little bit of tempo, a bit of energy. Whatever the story is just to explain to people, just keep calm. We've lost our way a little bit, but we can remedy it in these ways. You know, it's like during COVID with, you know, I've got children. Like, I could sit with them and give them facts and figures about COVID and vaccination and, you know, all the rest of it. It mean nothing to them, really. What they want to hear is that this is what's happening. We're suffering a little bit here. We're having a real dislocation of the life we want to lead. We're not doing the things we want to do, but hey, it's like, gonna be okay. We'll just stick together, keep doing these 2 or 3 things, and then everything will play itself out and we'll be back in the game here.
I think it's a real evolutionary thing again, isn't it? In terms of how we live through stories and how despite the real reality around us, we create something around us to say, oh, I'm here. What's my purpose of our work? It's like, what's our purpose for doing this? It's not monetary, but it's again, it's talking about, I have that vision at the end, and you kind of fill in the gaps and colouring that in with a story and a narrative. I think it's something that applies really well, not just for teams, but for just for people in life, in sport, in whatever, to make sure to see their lives as a narrative and a story, and to know that they can, you know, actually think differently about it and actually shape it in a different way. That's the biggest thing I took from it. Another thing was, and I've done this for a while in terms of my research and stuff is very much into hierarchy and finding the influence within teams and measuring it and seeing how it's dispersed across the team and seeing actual hierarchical kind of structure within that. And you had a really interesting chapter on hierarchy, a kind of argument, not for and against it, but I think evidencing the many aspects of it, and in ways it's not helpful, in ways that it is. For me, I've always been in favor of, say, like leadership groups. And I really like that idea of setting that. I think you touched on it well in the book, was you've got the lions, you got the wolves, and you got the sheep as well. And I think that's a great way of like, for one, selling it to a player, but it just really sums it up really well. Is that's how I kind of see it as well. And setting that in stone, I think, is a good thing to do. But I think you'd also argue there's a negative aspect to that as well.
Yeah, there's in terms of hierarchy, what I love to see in coaches personally is just them to be very adaptable to the group of human beings that they're responsible for, and not having one fixed way of doing things all the time. And in the book, I tell the story of Vern Cotter, the Scotland rugby coach. Because I believe in some situations, coaches should be more directive and to a degree hierarchical. And then in other situations, they should relax both of those things. And the example with Vern Cotter when he was Scotland rugby coach was I think one that is quite widely applicable. So when he first went in there, the team were ranked like 10th in the world. They were not a good team, particularly not a particularly competitive team. And he went in there and he saw the standards they weren't fit enough. They didn't really do enough thinking and analysis around their performances. The skill level wasn't what he had expected, etc. So in the very first camp, he had a 3-year contract, and he ultimately took them to the highest ranking they've ever had in that period. But in the first year, he said to everyone, I'm going to be a very directive coach. Our standards are down here, and we are not going to be competitive unless they're up here. So I am going to be directive. I'm going to be a bit dictatorial about what's required and what the line is that we have to meet. Otherwise, there's not a place for you here. And he said, I'm not going to particularly enjoy that because I said not really the way I love to coach. But in order to get to a standard, I'm just going to have to take us there. Okay. Second year, I'm going to grow the player leadership group so that you're able to really sort of share a bit of ownership around the way we play and the type of environment we create. So that's not being so much dictated by me, but we're doing it together. And then in the third year, I believe we'll be in a position where the standards are there, you're competitive, you're able to lead yourselves, and I'll just be a facilitative coach. And and he did exactly that. And in the third year, we literally went into camp, and he reminded everybody of that speech and said, I'm going to leave the room now with the other coaches and the players. You're going to tell us what you believe we can do in the Six Nations, what your aspiration is for that, and also the type of footy you want to play. He did. He went away. So within the space of those 3 years, he was able to, as a world-class coach, be for a young, inexperienced, slightly immature group, be the directive, a bit hierarchical. But by the third year, back right off, smash the hierarchy, flatten it, and be facilitative rather than directive. So that's my go-to. I don't go to a model of what we should do. I like to be contextual. What's this team need right now?
Yeah.
And with young players who haven't had those experiences, etc., need to grow, they do need a bit more direction. It's obvious. But if you've got a group of guys who have won a lot of different experiences, then to me, got to make sure you unleash them.
I talked to my dad a while ago about that in terms of it's great. A manager comes in authoritative to collaborative. So it's like, here's your vision. But you have to get to a point where the team is managing itself and fueling itself. Because Dad always talks about when he was at Man United back in '99, obviously one of their best teams. And he said that of Sir Alex that he didn't really do anything in terms of, like you would say, being authoritative. He was more, he stood back, but built an environment where Roy Keane's a captain, where he can manage, he can captain and lead the entire team. He's the line of the team, and you've got Gary Neville, who's almost like the wolf of the team, and then you've got the people following. So you get to a point, and that's what every coach I think wants, is to get to a point where that team can manage and fuel itself. Because you do find, I think, in football and sport and everything, it's difficult. You can't, as a coach, you're almost structuring, constructing around a team, and it's up for that. I think you've got to colour in the gaps and colouring it, and it's like that's what you create a structure around something, a style of play, or this is how you play, this is what we want to do, and then it's for them to be creative within that and create something, and ultimately for it to be fueled by them. And that's why I like hierarchies, because that's a big aspect of a team fueling itself, I think, and having that direction of having someone that points and then other people follow. But I think an argument you made as well is that not a dictatorship, but a kind of a leader who listens, who can, I guess, have the entire message of the group and encapsulate that entire message of the group and their ideas and make it a part of everything. So it's hierarchy, but it's like a collaborative one. It's not too much of a dictatorship, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It's and for the people who haven't read the book, the idea of lions, wolves, and sheep. The lions are they're like the alphas. They will take responsibility and go for the kill.
Yeah.
Right? They're not waiting, like Harry Kane type of people. They're not waiting for someone to do something. they will take responsibility and frigging go for it. Whatever needs to be done to win, they'll do it.
Mm.
And then Wolves are the ones who actually can look like absolute superstars, but they don't have that killer instinct in them. What they wait for is when the team gets on top, and then they will jump in like Wolves do on the carcass. And I've been, with the South African cricket team was very interesting. We were world number one pretty much for 4 years. But it was quite interesting. Out of our top 11 players, we probably only had 2 or 3 Lions.
Mm.
But we had some Wolves, maybe 4 or 5 of them. So they probably averaged over 50 in tests and things, some of these guys. But actually, if a game was on the line, not necessarily the ones you would look to win it for you. And some of the ones with lower statistics were the Lions that we needed. People like, in that example, Faf du Plessis, probably only averaged 30-something in his test career, but he was an absolute lion. If something needed to be done, he would do it. He always rose to the big, big, tough occasions. So it's good to have awareness of your group of people, of who they are.
Mm.
And obviously, if you haven't got the lions, you need to find them. You're not going to win with just sheep who are just happy to be there and just want to follow and just want to survive. And wolves who will be great, but only when we're on top.
Mm.
So yeah, they're all interesting ways of understanding how to put a team together, aren't they?
Never a solid plan, though, is there?
No. You're stuck with what you've got to a degree, but you need to have some insight into these things, I think.
Last question, last kind of topic would be your job. I've heard you describe that it's almost a job that you felt that you had to make up yourself in terms of performance coach or culture building person. What do you think that the future of it is? Because I am a training sport and exercise psychologist, so I'll be qualified in that sense. And that's technically within football and other sports, that is the route. But it misses out on many aspects of what you talk about. For example, where a sports psychologist maybe is someone who works one-on-one with an athlete or a player, whereas I imagine you would argue that you work more so with a collective of people, more so than the one-on-one and consulting quite personally with them. It's more so about the group. What is the future whereby there is an actual set role, whether it be sports psychology, performance coach, or whatever? What is the possible future of that?
Well, you're right. I mean, I think my role isn't something that I looked at and went, I want to do that. I don't even know if it really existed. I've just sort of probably made it up myself a little bit in terms of what I do. I think it's interesting that I do have these amazing opportunities because without any qualifications, I think there's a message in there somewhere. People are looking for something different. And I don't think I'm particularly great at anything, but I think one thing I definitely do is try and simplify for coaches and players and teams what the hell we're here for and how we get the best out of ourselves and what a good environment would look like and what a crap one might look like, and then just go to work on that. To answer your question, I think the best psychologists that I've seen and worked with, they're able to hold two things at the same time. They're able to hold the ability to have a deep one-on-one impact on an individual. Okay, they can do that work. They've got the knowledge and the skills and that. But on the other hand, they're also very comfortable with the social situation of the team. Yeah. The team dynamics, the things in the environment which are helping us and hindering us. And I have probably had a lot of experiences where the psychologists have been very comfortable in the one-on-one conversations, but reluctant to take that team space. So they tend to sit in the shadows a little bit. Maybe half the team they've got a proper relationship with where they can talk to and hopefully help them perform. But they're not actually owning the social space. And for me, I don't think that's great because you can do whatever you want with an individual. I could have the best psychologist in the world and you put me in a toxic environment and I'll be a complete head case. Like we are incredibly reactive, 70%, to whatever environment we're in. So I don't see the point of having a brilliant psychologist when we've got a flawed environment. So for me, that person, and there are some great examples, Pippa Grange and Ian Mitchell, Gilbert Enoka with the All Blacks, they live in both worlds. They're able to say with confidence to the coach, hey, don't worry about these guys. Actually, the biggest issue we've got right now is the environment is a problem. People aren't clear on what it is we're trying to do right now. People aren't clear. You're giving conflicting messages you say you want them to attack, but when they do, it goes on the big screen in the review and they're shamed. that you need people who are able to comment. The people, we've got some cliques here which are starting to operate now, and it's becoming a problem. You need people who are able to see both. So it doesn't matter what your job title is. I just think they are the people who can really help coaches and leaders if you're comfortable on both sides of it.
I was listening to someone who worked in Manchester United previously, who's doing a talk, and he said psychology needs to go through a football filter, and I think that's so true. And he said he always said he'd work with a good sports psychologist, but he hasn't quite found one, and I thought that was quite interesting. It's not one that suits, and I think, like you said, fits into the environment. I'm 50-50 because I say with the football, with the women's, it's like I do less so with the players, more so working with the coaches, but I can have a really good relationship with the coaches, having that engagement. But there's also aspects of that where you're the sports psychologist, and I think there's a fear there that people don't want to talk to you because of that, or look like they're talking to you, and it's hard to get that relationship. But performance coach is a great title, and my dad always argues, call yourself a performance coach. That would be perfect, and that's almost like you get that engagement from that. But when you say psychology is a bit of I think there's sometimes a threat to that as well. But yeah,
I think your dad makes an awesome point. I mean, I'm not trained, so I could never call myself a psychologist anyway, and it's not the work I do. I'm not into the one-on-one stuff. But even someone like me, if I meet someone who's a psychologist, I find myself get a bit self-conscious. And unless they're really warm, I get a bit uncomfortable. Again, probably get a bit intimidated because I probably suspect I'm a bit of a nutcase myself. But if you tell me you're a coach, I'm good as gold with that, no problem at all. Oh yeah, great. So I actually think that makes a big difference. If you're asking, young people just to, hey, here's the psychologist, doesn't matter if it's sports or not. Some people still don't necessarily want to go there. They're nervous about it, and you can't really get in there. So I think that's a good point. And I actually have said this to a few psychologists or friends of mine, like, why don't you call yourself a coach?
Yeah.
Because I think when you're doing your best part of the job, you are coaching.
You are a coach. I feel like
absolutely you're a coach. Why wouldn't you call the All Blacks, they call themselves mental skills coaches.
We say when I work with the Newcastle women's, I say you coach the coaches. That's what I do. Coach coaches. And to be fair, it makes the biggest difference because the coaches, the actual coaches, are the ones that have that impact with the players and do the work with them on the grass. If you can inform how they communicate with the players and what the message is, and mainly we speak very similar in terms of coaching environments, and that's what I kind of preach to coaches. And if you make it their message, then it becomes everybody else's. You don't really need to be that, but it's quite an argument, and there'll be an interesting future for sports psychology anyway.
It's no doubt about that. It hasn't nailed its role, as for how I would put it. I think
that's it.
It isn't adding as much value as it should. It's partly, I just think it's been set up in a certain way. If it moved more into the coaching world as just an equal coach, along with the defense coach and attack coach and set piece coach or goalkeeping coach, then that's a different vibe altogether. And I think they'd have a bit more of an influence on the coaching staff and on the players. So, mate, I think you're going to have a spectacular career. I think even the pod and the way that you're approaching all of this, you're going to be different.
We'll see. I'll probably end up sitting in my room doing this forever. We'll find out. Well, thank you, Owen, for coming on, and thank you lot for watching and listening to the entire episode. It's such, like I said at the start, such a good interview and so interesting for me. Someone, when I read the book, I really just identify with everything he was talking about, and someone I was really on the same wavelength with, and really someone who I think who is doing it right in terms of applying psychology. Again, like you said, someone without qualifications, but someone that's so well at telling stories, so good at engaging, that it just works for players, for teams. And you can see that with Southgate in England, how he's been utilised there, and you can see that in the England team itself, in the performances and in their attitudes and how they talk. It's so interesting to get a bit of insight into that, as well as the speculation on Manchester United and what his thoughts were on that also. I hope you lot enjoyed it just as much as I did. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, like I always say, make sure you like the video, subscribe if you want more interviews like that as well. It really support what I'm trying to do at the moment. And if I can keep interviewing people like this and keep doing this, that'd be the best, I'd be so happy. I am happy doing it now. You can tell I love that interview. It was so good. If you're on Spotify, on Google, on Apple, make sure if you can give a 5-star rating. Like I said, anything less, I'll come and find you. That would be really helpful. And yeah, thank you for watching and listening and engaging and helping. Comment and let me know what you think, your thoughts, or what you've learned from it, or anything. I've learned a lot from an interview like that, and maybe let me know what sort of guests you do want on as well. I'm thinking and mulling over in my own mind what type of people we should have on, and who you might be interested in hearing from, and who I might be interested in hearing from, and I can really do with some ideas. So if you could let me know, that'd be great. But as always, thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you again anytime after this. I'll see you then.
This is McClaren Performance.